Welcome to the Radio Wire. I'm Bruce Carlson, N9MDE, or Norway 9 Mike Delta Echo. Today I wanted to talk about learning and the thought process, the power of the mind. You know, learning can be, some things can be abstract and can take a while maybe to put it into practice or in the habit of thinking a certain way and all that. So that's what I want to talk about today. Starting out as a teenager, I had an interest in radio, electronics, and shortwave listening. So I got books from the library at school initially, and built some things, smaller things, took things apart, and so I progressed where I built a kit for my first CB radio. It was a Heath kit. I had an older tube shortwave radio that I used for listening to shortwave broadcasts, and then I kind of increased my equipment to a solid state equipment, and built a ham radio, a CW transceiver later on. And I could have been maybe 15, 16 years old, repaired the neighbor's CP radio and did a modulation, so I was self-taught on most of that. And then I went to the community college, and so I got away from a lot of that as far as from a hobby standpoint. And so, at the community college, which was a great opportunity for me because, I hadn't applied myself much in high school, so math, very weak. Chemistry, I had none at all. So when I got to the community college, I had to start with some basic math and kind of get myself prepared. But, I did not give up. I was persistent with it. I said, I'm going to do this, because then I changed my direction to electrical engineering versus the technology. So math became even more important. Well, when I got into the college algebra level with trigonometry, everything clicked for me, and I really liked that. And so there I had my foundation in math and moving forward with it. And I went through all the calculus sequence at the community college. It was a pretty good program. And, my last examination at the college was my final in calculus, and I think I got in a very high 90s on it. So imagine starting out the way I did at the community college with basically almost zero with math. Same thing with chemistry. General chemistry was kind of abstract for me. I didn't like it. It was a little hard at first, but then when I got into the second semester, it was all solutions, liquids, ions, and it was more math-based. Well, I did very well in that. So there again, I gave myself a chance, and look what happened. So then I was accepted at Michigan Technological University in the School of Electrical Engineering. And I can remember applying for it. I remember right where I was sitting right now. I can remember that. Sent in my application, I was accepted. And all that math and everything I did really served me well up at school there. So I was felt very fortunate with that. And so years later, I went and got my ham license. Some of my friends, we were all interested in that. We grew up with some of that, as I had mentioned. So we all became licensed, and we had to do the Morse code, and I was always afraid of it, and until I started learning it, it wasn't bad at all, and it was quite an interesting thing to do. So when I got my license, I made sure that I worked more CW to see what it was like, and it was quite an interesting thing to do. It was very the contacts seemed very special to do that, and of course my goal was voice, and so I've not used code really since then. And I realize a lot of people maybe I get back into that someday. But so yeah, then I did become licensed. When I was a kid, I dreamed of having a ham radio transceiver and becoming licensed and all that. But when I went back later and I went and did that. So it's talking about learning and everything too now. I went back later and got my PE license. And what I did there was, they did provide the state an outline of topics. You had a rough outline of the morning session, the basics, more fundamentals in electrical engineering, and then the afternoon was more advanced on different topics. And of course, I for the afternoon I selected power because that was my training up at school. That was my specialty area, so I did that. And so in preparing for that though, I set up 2 folders, binders, one for the morning, one for the afternoon, and it was all based on the information I was provided, and I put notes and references of things, and it was a lot of work to do that, but I was persistent and with that, and I had a routine. Every Saturday morning I'd get up and I'd listen to ham radio and work on that. So and then I did pass it, and I easily passed it, and I was very pleased with that because that was something I wanted to do. One nice thing with that is, what interesting is that my professor up at school for power systems, he had co-authored a book for a PE study, a reference book. So I happened to go up to the Michigan Tech bookstore and I found that, and I'm reading through it, and sure enough, he was a co-author, my professor. So the deal we had is when I passed the examination, he would sign it, which we did. So that was quite a thing. And the other part of this too, I want to talk about today with the mind, our mind, and the conscious and subconscious is an important thing to understand, because the conscious is with logic and puts thoughts into the subconscious, and the subconscious does what it's told, but it operates 24/7, and is very powerful. So we have to, what are we putting into our subconscious, and so that's a big part of learning too, is that, and gratitude is a good way to improve having gratitude is a good way to improve your thought process, in putting good things in your subconscious, really. And so that's an important thing. And the other thing is giving yourself a chance, give others a chance, because who knows what you could do. And so and also then on learning, I've always felt it was a privilege to learn, even if it was some classes that I didn't particularly like or seemed overly difficult. I had a few, I guess, but I thought it was a privilege. And you want to embrace something. There are things that we have to learn. Maybe it's going to be learning iMovie for me with doing videos, but I'm going to embrace that. I'm going to learn it. I've got some help with all that right now, since this is my 3rd video here on YouTube. So I'm all things to learn, and and being persistent and consistent with things, having a routine, and that's very important. So yeah, in the next video coming up here, I'm going to talk about the ELF project. It's been decommissioned. It was a submarine communication system, and I'd like to talk about that, and a little bit about the technical part of it, and a little bit about the historical part. I have a little bit of a story, my personal story around that too, that I'm going to want to share. So look forward to seeing you next time, and please subscribe and like this if you like this video today.